Welcome back. Today's lesson in social studies, our Michigan adventure, is Chapter 3, Lesson 2, A Brave Priest in a Strange Land. Before we begin, I'd like to apologize for Chapter 3, Lesson 1 not working or having the wrong video on there, so you do have an extra week to get that finished. Okay, let's begin. Chapter 3, Lesson 2, A Brave Priest in a Strange Land. Let's find out about one of those early French missionaries, Jacques Marquette. Now remember, the French were the first people to inhabit or to come to Michigan. We read about in prior chapters the French coming to trade with the Indians. So here we have a French missionary. A missionary is someone who helps people but also has another thing that they want to do with those people because they feel that maybe some of those people don't have an idea of who God is and religion. So we're going to learn today about a very special person named Jacques Marquette. If you think to yourself, oh, Marquette, that sounds kind of familiar, you're right. Jacques Marquette, or Marquette, is a city in the Upper Peninsula. And let's get back to our story. Okay, let's find out about one of those early French missionaries, Jacques Marquette. He is sometimes called Pierre Marquette. Marquette was born in 1637 to a respected family in northern France. When he was 17, he decided to become a priest. He studied long and hard for this work, finishing his studies in 1666. Let's take a look at the text box there. Remember, those text boxes are very important to us. They have very important information in there. So names used for Marquette. Jacques Marquette was a French priest. He belonged to the Catholic Church. Priests are called father out of respect. This is why in some places you may read about Father Marquette instead of Jacques Marquette. The word father in French is père. Thus, certain people would say Pierre Marquette. The river in western Michigan is the Pierre Marquette River. That is another way of saying the Father Marquette River. Bottom of the page. Father Marquette's greatest wish was to become a missionary in America. He wanted to bring his religion to the tribes. The missionaries who went to America were heroes in France. Some of them had been killed by the Indians. Imagine traveling so far to a strange land. It might be like traveling to the moon today. So Pierre Marquette wanted to bring his religion. Not saying that his religion is right or wrong, but that's what his job was, or that's what a missionary wanted to do. Bring his religion to people who he thought had no religion, and he was going to be very surprised. Let's go to the next page. At last, Marquette was sent to Canada. After several months, he traveled to our Upper Peninsula and studied the Ottawa and Huron languages. Next subheading, Michigan's first two towns. Marquette started two settlements with little churches. That was over 300 years ago, in 1668 and 1671. These were Sault Ste. Marie and St. Ignace. These towns are in our eastern Upper Peninsula. He started the two oldest towns in Michigan. Remember, that was a comprehension question. What is the oldest city in Michigan? And that was Sault Ste. Marie. Many among the Ottawa and Huron tribes became Christians because of his work. They just liked him and believed in what he was saying. Take a look at the right-hand side. There is a picture of what they believe Jacques Marquette looked like. Next subheading. To explore a big river, Marquette knew a young fur trader named Louis Joliet. In 1672, Joliet asked Marquette to come with him. He was going to explore a great river. This was the Mississippi River. Marquette could speak to the tribes on the way. No Europeans had traveled down this river. They would be the first ones. In May of 1673, they left St. Ignace to begin their adventure. They paddled along the northern shore of Lake Michigan to Green Bay, Wisconsin. Along the way, they stopped at the village of the Menominee tribe. Please don't go. When they said where they were going, the Menominee gave them a stern lecture. They said something like this: "There are tribes who are mean to strangers. They break their heads without any cause. There is even a monster whose roar is heard from a great distance. This monster blocks the way and will swallow up anyone who comes too close." Marquette told the Indians he could not take their advice. He said his work was so important he would risk his life. The Indians helped them. Marquette and Joliet took their canoes up the Fox River in Wisconsin. Another Indian village was sighted. They asked if the two guides would help them. They wanted to find a river which flowed to the Mississippi. On June 10th, the Frenchmen and the two guides left. An amazing crowd of Indians watched. They paddled through swamps and many small lakes, Marquette wrote. "We greatly needed our two guides who safely conducted us to a portage of 2,700 paces and helped us to transport our canoes to enter the river, after which they returned home, leaving us alone in this unknown country." Alone in a dangerous country. Now the men went down the Wisconsin River. Marquette wrote in his diary on June 17th, "We safely entered the Mississippi with a joy I cannot express." Next page. What did they see in the new land? There were no Indians at first. Still, they worried about unfriendly tribes. At night, the men slept in the canoes in the river. 8 days later, they saw footprints along the riverbank. Marquette and Joliet followed the footprints. They shouted and yelled to attract the Indians and maybe end their lives. Marquette spoke to them in the language of the Illinois tribe. Would they understand? Yes, they did. Soon, as was the Indian custom, pipes were smoked as a token of peace. At the bottom of the page, we see a very important map and text feature. This is the routes of Marquette and Joliet. Remember, they were just in a birch bark canoe. That was the travel. So when they were on land or when there was no water, they had to carry that over their heads as they were hiking along the trail or in the forest. So he started at Sault Ste. Marie. That's the starting point. He traveled through Wisconsin and found the Mississippi River. Time to go back. Marquette and Joliet then continued on their journey. After several days, they were sure the Mississippi did not go to the Pacific Ocean. It carried the explorers further and further south. This river was not a way to China. Remember, they wanted to find China for the spices and the silk. The two men had followed the Mississippi for over 600 miles. They decided to turn back toward home. The trip had been very hard, and Marquette became ill or sick. Joliet left Marquette at an Indian village on the Fox River. Maybe he could rest and get better, but his illness lasted over the summer. Still, he returned to visit the Indians in Illinois. We see there at the bottom, Father Marquette died on a sand dune near the Pierre Marquette River. The river was named for him. So here we have Marquette was very sick as a subheading. Let's begin. There his illness grew much worse. 2 French friends came to help him back to St. Ignace. The friends paddled hard and fast. Sadly, Marquette did not make it. One night he died along the shore of Lake Michigan. The year was 1675. His friends buried him near a river. Now this river is called the Pierre Marquette in his honor. Marquette was a brave Many priests and missionaries work hard to tell the tribes about their religion. Top of the page. Joliet had trouble too. So not only did Marquette get very sick and ended up dying, Joliet had some trouble too. Let's begin. What happened to Joliet? He had almost reached his home in Canada when he and his men went through a terrible rapids on the St. Lawrence River. The canoes flipped over and were smashed. Some of the men drowned. Poor Joliet lost all his notes about the trip. One of the canoes was borrowed from his sister-in-law. She was upset when Joliet would not return it. Then she sued him in court. What a great way to end an adventure. That's the end of the chapter. Go ahead and complete your exit ticket.